Good morning, Eastside family. Glad all of you could join us today. It is my pleasure to welcome Ms. Brenda Vaughn from Georgia Student Finance Commission. She's going to be sharing lots of great information about financial aid for college. So whether you're wanting technical, 2-year, 4-year college, I promise you're going to learn a lot today. We will be looking at questions in the chat room, so please feel free to put your questions there and we will do our best to answer them. So Ms. Vaughn, are you ready to take it away?
I'm ready. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for attending. My name is Brenda Vaughn with the Georgia Student Finance Commission, and today we are going to be talking about federal and state aid. So what we're going to do first is actually we are going to discuss or define federal aid, the different types of aid, federal program, the state aid program, and the application process. Oops, sorry, let's see. Okay, so financial aid really is just to help you pay for college expenses. And that with those expenses, there are direct costs and then there are indirect costs, both of which are part of the cost of attendance that each institution has created. It's an estimate of what they think that it might cost you to attend that university. And so, of course, it's going to be different at each institution. It's going to include those direct costs like tuition and fees, on-campus housing, the meal plan, parking permits, anything you're paying directly to the institution. And why it's an estimate is because it includes also indirect costs, like your books, rent if you're off campus, school supplies, groceries. So those items are a little more difficult to know at the institution of what it's going to cost you. So it's really important for you to create your own budget or spending plan to be able to know exactly what it is going to cost you to attend a university. But to help to pay for those types or all of those expenses, there are different types of financial aid. We have the scholarships and grants, which is money that you don't have to repay. Work study is like an on-campus job, so it's like a wages that you earn. And then of course you have the loans. And with each of those different types, there are a number of different resources. And today we are going to focus on what the federal and state aid resources are available. Colleges and university has money, institutional aid that could be available. Private foundations, professional service organizations, employers, and private companies also could have money available. Typically, those are in scholarship form. And so a lot of times, especially those professional organizations, they're not always about the GPA. Sometimes it's about, you could look at things for your height, ethnicity, religious affiliation, gender, maybe you're multiple, left-handed, any of those kinds of things could also be funded in some sort of scholarship form. The best places to look for these scholarships, one, you need to start early. Don't stop at 1 or 2. Make sure you're applying all the time and set yourself a goal, maybe 1 a week. As you're getting nearer to the end of school, maybe 2 a week. And look for those scholarships. One, I know your guidance counselor's webpage, they are full of information to help you navigate through the scholarship system. So they have a lot of local scholarships. So their webpage, they're posting it, they're emailing it, they're tweeting it, all those kinds of things. Also, remember there are other schools in your county and area that also may have some information. So feel free to look on their web pages as well. And do not pay anybody to help you with the scholarship searching or applying. All of that is free information and you shouldn't have to pay anybody to do that. So let's talk about federal aid. Federal aid, to be eligible, you do have to be a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen, be a high school graduate or GED recipient, be enrolled in an eligible degree or certificate program. The student does have to have a valid Social Security number. And males have to be registered for selective service, which is the draft. Now, that doesn't mean you have to wait until you're 18 and registered to complete the FAFSA. You can go ahead and complete the FAFSA, and then they will, on the FAFSA, it'll ask you, are you registered for selective service? You can mark no. And then it will ask you, do you want to register? And you mark yes. So you can complete the FAFSA before you are actually registered for selective service. And then you also have to be maintaining satisfactory academic progress, which means that when you're enrolling in classes in college, you're going to have to complete them. If you're doing a lot of withdrawals, incompletes, or failings, then it could negatively affect your financial aid eligibility. So if you're thinking about withdrawing from a class, make sure that you are checking with your financial aid advisor to see how that's going to affect your financial aid. So let's talk about the different types of federal aid grants. So you have the Pell Grant. This year, the most that you can get is $6,345. And that is all depending on your EFC. Your EFC is your expected family contribution. And that is a number that is calculated based on the information that you're putting on the FAFSA. The lower the EFC, the more likely you are to get free aid with scholarships or grants. There's also the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. The most that a student could get is $4,000. It is also need-based, which means it is dependent on your EFC. Again, the lower the EFC, the more likely you are to get it. Now, the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant is first come, first serve. So you want to apply early, and you want to check with the institution to see what their priority consideration deadline is. That deadline is the time where that school will probably be out of money from the SEOG. So for example, December 15th, I believe, is UGA's priority deadline. If you think you're eligible for this type of money, you want to make sure you're applying before December 15th, because by that time, the money has already gone to other students. Federal work study, again, part-time job. So you'll work as you are earning money. It is also first come, first serve. So you want to make sure to apply early for that as well. You want to make sure you're applying to all the scholarships, grants, all those things first, getting as much free money as possible. But a lot of times there are students that are also going to need some additional funding. So you can utilize the loan program. Subsidized loan is need-based. That means that the interest is being paid while you're in school. So you're not accruing interest while you're in school. But there is an interest rate here of 2.75. That means that, so for example, I borrow $1,000 as a freshman. After 4 years, not borrowing any additional money, all I owe back is $1,000. Now, once I graduate and I have that $1,000 in repayment, that's when it's going to start accruing at an interest rate of 2.75. So the longer it takes me to pay off that loan, the more interest I'm accruing on it. The unsubsidized loans is a loan that you will be accruing interest on while you're in school, and it will be at the 2.75%. Both of those are student loans. It's the student's responsibility for repayment, be on the student's credit report. So all of that is the student. Those two are the student loans. There's also the PLUS loan for parents. Only one parent can be a borrower. It is based on credit history. You can borrow up to cost of attendance. And the interest rate for this loan is 5.3%. You can defer payment until after graduation, but parents can pay on that while the student is in school. There are some loan limits. So as a freshman, you can only borrow up to $5,500. Only $3,500 of it can be subsidized loans. You can borrow all of it, you can borrow none of it, or you can borrow some of it. So you really have to look at your own budget, your own spending plan to decide how much additional money is needed. So maybe you only need $1,000 more each semester. You can request $2,000 for the year from the subsidized loan in this scenario. So that's the federal program. I'll just check real quick, Elizabeth, if there was any questions on that. Okay, not hearing any. I'll move on to the Georgia Federal Aid Program. Just remember, if you have questions, go ahead and you can put them in the chat. So think of the HOPE program as a family and the Georgia Lottery kind of as a parent. The HOPE program provides money to assist students with their college education. You have to meet all the federal requirements to be able to receive the HOPE program, but there are some additional requirements here. One, you have to be a legal resident of Georgia, and you have to be attending a post-secondary education institution. There is a list of the institutions on gafutures.org. All the public colleges, technical colleges are listed, many of the private. I can guarantee you that there's not one institution on there that is out of the state of Georgia. So you have to be within the state of Georgia for it to be a post-secondary institution. So the HOPE program, again, there's different pieces. So you have the scholarship side and you have the grant side. The major difference between the two, scholarships are going to be utilized if you are earning or pursuing an associate's degree or bachelor's degree. And the grant is if you are pursuing a certificate or diploma program. Okay, so we're going to talk about the scholarship side first, and we're going to focus on the HOPE scholarship. So again, pursuing associate's degree or bachelor's degree, have to graduate with a 3.0 high school HOPE GPA and have 4 academically rigorous courses. Academically rigorous courses include AP courses, IB courses, dual enrollment courses if it's a core course, any advanced math, science, foreign language 2 or higher. Now, that math and science doesn't really have to say advanced math, but it could be like psychology, chemistry, biology 2, pre-calculus, algebra 2. There's the full list is also on gafutures.org. Now, your high school HOPE GPA is going to be different than your cumulative HOPE high school GPA. The HOPE GPA is only calculated by us at GSFC. We only include scores, your courses between the 9th through the 12th grade. And we get that based on the transcripts that your high school sends us. Again, we look for the 4 academically rigorous courses and we add weight to that. And you can look at your HOPE GPA by logging into gafutures.org, clicking on My GA Futures, and then clicking on My High School HOPE GPA. It will look like this. So you will be able to see your HOPE GPA. You'll be able to see how many rigorous courses you have thus far. And to view your transcript and to see exactly which courses are calculated in the HOPE GPA and which ones we consider rigor, you can click on the View Your Detailed GPA report for that information. So seniors right now could log in and see what their GPA is from 9th grade to 11th grade. And then in February, we will do a preliminary calculation. And then we will do a final calculation at graduation with the final transcript. And that will be the HOPE GPA that is used to determine your eligibility. So for the HOPE scholarship, you have to earn it with a 3.0 high school HOPE GPA. To maintain it, you have to have a 3.0 college HOPE GPA. we will be checking every spring semester and when you attempt your 30, 60, and 90 hours to make sure you're maintaining that 3.0 College Hope GPA, which is also going to be different than your college GPA. You will continue to go to GA Futures and look in My GA Futures and then click on your College Hope profile to be able to view your College Hope GPA. We will be calculating those every semester because we'll get transcripts from the institutions every semester. So the Zell Miller Scholarship, again, associate's degree or bachelor's degree. The valedictorian, salutatorian will receive the Zell Miller Scholarship. If you're not one of those two people, you'll at least have to have a 3.7 high school Hope GPA and a 1200 on the SAT or 26 on the ACT. Now, just to be clear, you have to have the 3.7 high school Hope GPA and one of the two test scores, 1200 on the SAT or 26 on the ACT. I know a lot of admissions counselors are waiving the SAT, ACT requirements for admissions, but right now it is still required for the Zell Miller Scholarship. That could change at any point, so you want to make sure to keep listening and reading those emails that are being posted, especially by your counselor, because the minute we know or hear anything, we'll let you all know. But right now, that is still required for the Zell Miller Scholarship. Now, to maintain Zell Miller, you have to maintain it with a 3.3 College Hope GPA. Again, we'll check spring semester and when you attempt 30, 60, and 90 hours. If you go if you're a Zell Miller recipient and you have a College Hope GPA of at least a 3.0, you could lose the Zell Miller Scholarship, but then you can use the Hope Scholarship. And then at your next benchmark, we'll check to see if you have your 3.3 to be able to gain Zell Miller back. You can only gain Zell back once, and you can only gain Hope back once as well. Now, when you enter college, if you enter with the Hope Scholarship, you cannot go up to the Zell Miller Scholarship. To be able to get Zell Miller, you have to enter college with Zell Miller. To lose either one of them, Zell or Hope Scholarship, you have to, of course, you got to maintain that GPA. If you've reached your maximum 127 hours, if you are in school longer than 10 years or wait before the 10 years is up to utilize it. And if once you receive your bachelor's degree, then you're no longer eligible for the Hope money. Okay, so that's the scholarship side. Now we have the grant side. Again, grants are for certificate or diploma programs. So you will enroll in a certificate diploma program. You will be awarded the Hope grant. There is no test score requirement, no high school GPA requirement. You will just be awarded the Hope grant, but you will have to maintain a 2.0 college cumulative GPA, and you will be checked at your 30 and 60 paid semester hour. Zell Miller grant, if you are able to earn at least a 3.5 college cumulative GPA, you could move up to the Zell Miller grant. That will be checked every term to make sure that you are maintaining at least the 3.5 to be able to receive that Zell Miller grant. And then there's also the Hope Career Grant. And this is additional money for certain programs. And the programs were created to boost enrollment in these high demand certificate and diploma programs. There are over 300 certificate and diploma programs, and a few of them, if you combine the Hope program, the Hope grant and the Hope Career Grant together, could pay full tuition. So if you're interested in a certificate or diploma program, I would encourage you to go to gafutures.org to look up the Hope Career Grant, and you would be able to see all of the different individual certificate and diploma programs listed in these different fields. So what are the difference in the award amounts? So the Hope Scholarship and the Hope Grant will pay a portion of the tuition. It is a rate that's set by the legislator, and it's only a portion of tuition. No fees, no housing, no books, no supplies, just a portion of the tuition. You can go to the website and look on the award amounts to see what's being paid this year. And we won't know until probably July what will be paid for next year. Zell Miller Scholarship and the Zell Miller Grant will pay full standard tuition. And if you decide to go to a private institution, there is a set amount per semester. For the Hope Career Grant, this is the additional funding that's available depending on the program of study and the number of hours that you are enrolled. Okay, so now we're going to lean into the application process. So just checking to see if we had any questions so far. Okay, not hearing any. All right, so let's go through the application process. So there is the GSF apps and the FAFSA. The GSF apps is a one-time application. It is used to determine state aid only. And to be able to complete the application, you will need to go to gafutures.org. You will click on the Hope State Aid Program and then click on State Aid Applications. And the very first one is the GSF apps. It's a pretty simple application, maybe 10 minutes or so to complete. Students can do that pretty quickly. Now, the FAFSA is available and started October 1st. You will have to renew this annually. It will determine federal aid and state aid. We encourage you to submit both the GSF apps and the FAFSA for two reasons. The first is that the GSF apps is valid for 10 years. So if a student decides not to renew the FAFSA, we'll continue to review the college Hope GPA for eligibility. Second, after the FAFSA is submitted, a student could be selected for verification, and verification can extend that processing time for federal aid. And since the GSF apps is not included in that process, state aid could be awarded if eligible. All right, so let's talk a little bit about completing the FAFSA. There are two places students can complete their FAFSA. One is at the My Student Aid mobile app, and the other can be on FAFSA.gov. You will need Social Security numbers, tax information, W-2s, bank statements, any untaxed information, and you will also need FSA IDs. So your FSA ID basically is an account that you create with a username and a password. The student, the applicant, will need an FSA ID, and a parent will need an FSA ID. Now, which parent will need one? We'll talk about that a little bit later. Just know that one of them will need it. Why do you need it? Because one, you can use it to electronically sign the FAFSA, and you can use it to download your tax returns by using the data retrieval tool. You can go to fsaid.ed.gov to create your FSA ID. Parents, if you already have an FSA ID, maybe you have another child that's in college already and you're filling out the FAFSA, maybe you're a student yourself and you have a FSA ID, you don't have to create another one. A lot of times parents will say, I have one, but I can't even tell you what my password is or anything. You can click here on manage my FSAI ID and then do the whole forgot my password, forgot my username, and then be able to do reset that. So to begin, you can click on FAFSA.gov and click start here. And by the way, these screenshots are all going to be from the website and not the mobile app. Okay. But it will have the same questions and skip logic and things like that. So it was just easier to do it from the website. So you'll click start here. One of the first questions you're going to be asked is, which FAFSA do you want to complete? You want to make sure that you're selecting the appropriate FAFSA. So how do you know? Well, most seniors are graduating spring 2021, and they will begin attending college fall 2021. Okay, so if that's the case, then they will be completing the 21-22 FAFSA, and that will cover fall 21, spring 22, and summer 22, and you will be using your 2019 tax returns. Some students may want to start earlier, and they may want to start summer 21. If that student's going to do that, then they will need to complete the 2021 FAFSA using the 2018 tax returns. But most students will be completing the 21-22 FAFSA. So when you get into the website, there's some very handy tools. One is this little blue bar that tells you what information that they're looking for. In this case, it's the student information, and then later on it will change to parent information. They do have these helpful buttons with a blue button with a little question mark in it, and that is throughout the entire FAFSA. And so if there is a confusing question, then just click on the help button and it will give you some more details about what they're asking for. It's important to use the navigational tools on the website and not the back and forward button on the browser and the toolbar. And also, while we're here, it's going to ask for a saved key, and a saved key is like another password. So you can use something really short, but you will have to remember it if you're coming in. If you saved your FAFSA and you're coming back in to finish it, you can do that. You don't have to do this in one setting. And while you're completing the FAFSA, you can follow the progress at the top of the page here as well. So the first section of the FAFSA is the student demographics, and much of this information will come over from the FSA ID. Couple things to note. Most seniors are going to be working towards associate's degree, bachelor's degree, or a certificate or diploma program. For some reason, a lot of students are putting grad school. I know that they may want to go to grad school, but next year they will be an undergrad. And so it will be first bachelor's degree, associate's degree, or certificate or diploma program. Also here, it's asking about the work study program. I would encourage you to put yes. If you put no or don't know, then you will not even be looked at to see if you want to utilize the work study program. If you mark yes and later you decide not to do it, you don't have to. Here again, males have to be registered for selective service. So if you haven't registered, you can mark no. And then you'll see here, do you want us to register you? You can mark yes, and then you can consider yourself registered. Students can add up to 10 institutions. And since admission is a different process, students don't have to be accepted or have even applied to a school to list them. If you're interested in the school, go ahead and list them. Now, you do have up to 10. Most people don't need up to 10. But maybe you put 1 or 2, you submit the FAFSA, and then you're like, oh no, I want to add one more. You can easily log back in and add more schools if you need to. And if you, whatever schools you list here, they will be able to download your FAFSA information. Dependency status. So every student can be considered either dependent or independent, and there are several questions that determine the dependency status. Now, we briefly talked about grad school. So if a student answers yes to any one of these questions, then they could be considered an independent student. Most of them, it's going to be no, like they're not 24, they're not in grad school, they're not currently serving on active duty or veteran or anything like that. However, the last 3 I have seen more often than not, or more, that could be an option. If both your parents are deceased and at any time since you turned 13, you are in foster care or ward of the court, you could be independent. If you are in a legal guardianship, as determined by the court, you could be independent. If you are homeless or at risk of being homeless, then you could be considered independent. If you are in any of those situations and you want to talk through if that really applies to you, what the process is, at the end of this webinar, I will show you my contact information. You can feel free to contact your counselors to discuss, or you can call me or email me and let me know, and we can have a discussion about that as well. But most students are going to be dependent of their parents until they're age 24. So most students will be including parental information. So which parent? So if your parents are living together or married, then both parents will need to be included on the FAFSA. If they're divorced or separated, then the student can pick the parent they live with the most the last 12 months from the day that they're completing the FAFSA. If the student lived with both equally, then use the parent that financially supported the student the most. And if that's pretty equal, you can just pick one. And if the parent you selected happens to be remarried, then the step parent's information will need to be included on the FAFSA. So once you've selected the parent, it's time to enter their information. Notice the change on the FAFSA that indicated parent's information here. Students should answer these questions you should answer the question as of the day you're completing the FAFSA. Now it's time to complete the requested information for the first parent. And then you're going to do the second parent, which again could be a step parent. But make sure you remember which parent has the FSA ID, because you'll need that later. Also make sure the information is correct and matches their FSA ID account. And so, for example, if mom uses Smith as the last name on the FSA ID because Smith matches the Social Security Administration office, then she'll need to use Smith here. Now, that's regardless if she uses Jones as her married name or Smith Jones, but it's got to match whatever she's putting on her FSA ID and with the Social Security Administration office. Now, parents that don't have Social Security numbers, you can put zeros here. An error will appear, but once you click next, you'll be able to go on and proceed regardless. And those parents without socials cannot create FSA IDs, and that's okay. We'll just put everything in manually, and I'll show you an example of what that's going to look like as well. Now, the number in the household is a little confusing sometimes. So I want to go through this. The first line is for the number of parents, and it's automatically calculated based on if you put parent one, just one, or parent one and two. And the second line is for the student, which is already, again, filled in because there's going to be one. You're filling out the application. The next line is for any siblings that parents are financially supporting, even if they're not actually living in the house. So maybe I have a brother who's in college. He isn't working, and my parents are still financially supporting them. So I would put a 1 in this box for that sibling. This line is for anyone else the parent might be supporting, like a grandparent, niece, nephew, friend, foster child. I had a family who's actually supporting an exchange student. So anything like that you can put there. As you're entering numbers, this number will automatically change for the total in the household. And then how many in the household will be attending college for the year of this FAFSA? And I gave the example earlier that if I had a brother in college, I would actually put 2 here, one me and then my brother. And then he would also be putting 2 on his FAFSA because there's two in college. So if a student has already completed their required tax return for the FAFSA, they will click on already completed and select the type of tax return that they have filed. Now, if the parents are able to use the data retrieval tool, then this link will appear. There are some reasons that it may not appear. Parents who are married and filed separately, you're going to have 2 different tax returns, adding that information together to enter on the FAFSA. Parents who were married but now divorced or separated, you will have your tax return and actually have to separate information on it. And then parents who were single when they filed but now married, again, you'll have to have 2 different tax returns to add information together. But in any case, you'll still be able to complete the FAFSA. So you're just going to have to enter the information from the tax returns. And I'll show you an example of that a little bit later of what it looks like. But once you've clicked on the link to the IRS, you will have to select the parent that has the FSA ID, enter their FSA ID, and remember you're going to have to select parent 1 or parent 2. This message will appear to inform you that you will be leaving the FAFSA site and going to the IRS site. So click proceed to the IRS site. They will ask you again if that's okay to leave FAFSA. And then you will click OK to proceed into the data retrieval tool. Finally, through all of that red tape, you're now at the IRS site, and some of this information have already been filled in based on the FAFSA data, but parents will enter their mailing address. It must be the mailing address used when you filed. So if you've moved, you want to make sure you're using that old address. Also, it has to look exactly as it appears on the tax returns. So if somebody's abbreviated, then you need to abbreviate here as well. So for example, if you live on a drive and it's DR on the tax return, then you need to put or enter DR here at the website as well. And then you will click submit. If it's a match, this screen will appear and you will click on the button to transfer the information. And give it a few seconds because it just takes a moment or 2. And here you can see the information has been transferred from the IRS. And you're not going to see a dollar amount, and you will not be able to make any changes from the information, but you will see where everything has transferred. And from here on, parents will continue answering questions that didn't get filled. And those could be questions like, did you receive combat pay? You have a housing allowance, disability, are you receiving or are you paying child support? A little bit about your assets, your cash savings balances, and those kinds of things. Assets do not include retirement or the value of your family home or farm. again, I cannot tell you how helpful these little help buttons are. So when you're getting into those questions and you're concerned of what you might have and what you need to report or not need to report, make sure you're clicking on those little blue buttons because it will really help explain the information. So once the parent has entered all the information, it's going to be the student turn. So see again that the student bar has changed to student information. The student will be able to go through the process using the data retrieval tool as well if they file tax returns. If not, student will simply mark not going to file, click next, and proceed to answer all the questions that their parents were asked. And here's an example of the information or what it's going to look like if you need to add information manually and you're not able to use the data retrieval tool. The question explains exactly where to find the data on the tax return. So here you can see your gross income can be found on the IRS 1040 line 8B. So again, if you have any questions, just click on the little blue help button. So now you're pretty much done with the FAFSA. So you will submit by clicking provide student signature. You will agree to the terms and the conditions, and then you will sign the FAFSA, and then you will do the same for the parent. And for those parents, again, that do not have Social Security numbers, cannot create the FSA ID, but they will be able to print the signature page here, sign and date it, and then mail it to the address listed. You will receive a confirmation page once you've submitted it, and this confirmation page will tell you your EFC, your expected family contribution. And again, this is not a number, an amount that you're going to have to pay anybody. It's just a number to help determine eligibility. You will know if you're Pell eligible. And you typically, they'll say that you are eligible for loans, but you won't know if it's sub or unsubsidized until you get your financial aid package. Sometimes I'm seeing, especially if people are using Chrome, where there's going to be an error message and this confirmation page is emailed to the student. So if you receive an error message, make sure you check your email. Then you'll receive a student aid report through the mail, 3 to 5 days. It basically tells you the same thing that the confirmation page explained, your EFC, if you're Pell eligible. If an asterisk is found after the EFC, typically that means the student has been selected for verification. And again, being selected for verification doesn't mean the student did anything wrong or got in trouble. It's just to confirm the information that you entered on the FAFSA. So that being said, when parents are entering their tax return, especially if you're doing it manually, if you're adding tax returns together or separating income out, don't stress too much about it because you will probably be selected for verification. And the financial aid office will be able to make any of those corrections for you. So don't stress too much about it. Just answer them the best that you can. Now, there are sometimes special circumstances, and 2020 has been kind of a crazy year. So if there's been any change in your employment, if there's medical expenses, marital status, or anything like that, go ahead and complete the FAFSA with your 2019 tax returns and then contact the institution. So your next steps really are, one is to make sure the student has created a GA Futures account. They'll use that to check their HOPE GPA. They will complete their GSF apps there. And then you want to make sure you're creating your FSA ID and completing your FAFSA. Now, we always have upcoming webinars, and you can check on those at gafutures.org. And then here's our representative, our territory map. And again, my name is Brenda Vaughn. So you have my email address, my phone number, and this QR code. Actually, you can link to a website and book appointments with me. They can be, I don't know, 15 or 30 minutes long. If we need longer, that's fine. I can help you through your FAFSAs. I can answer any of your questions. We can do Zoom and work through the FAFSA, anything that you need. All of this is, of course, free of charge. There is no charge for it. And I would be glad to help you in any way that I can. So I'm going to actually leave this open and then allow this time for questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Vaughn. I know that's a lot of information, but it's really important information. And I do want to add, I think we mentioned in the beginning that we will make this available. We've been recording it, so I will let others know if you know people who couldn't attend, and I will let y'all know how to access this. So we've had some good questions. I actually have a question, Ms. Vaughn, about the Hope Career Grant eligibility, and I could have missed it, but can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So the Hope Career Grant is based on the program of study. So they have to be in a certain certificate or diploma program, and that list is on gafutures.org. So if they're in that program, then they would be eligible for that additional money. If they're eligible for the Hope Grant as well, there are some that pays full tuition. So it's just additional money for certain fields that students may like to, may be enrolled in.
Okay, so it's additional to the Hope Grant that
Correct.
They can receive. Okay, and is it a set amount, or does it depend on the program of study?
I can flip back over to that award amount. Let's see. It does, I think only welding is a different amount. Most of the other programs are the same, but it's based on the hours that they are enrolled.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I can look at that later.
Oh.
And
there we go, right there.
Okay, there you go. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So did that just start this year?
We've had this. And the really nice thing about this is because Zell Miller grant, you have to have that 3.5. Mm-hmm. So with the career grant and the Hope grant, which is the 2.0 that you have to have, again, those two together can really help pay that tuition.
Absolutely. And someone did ask about if we're going to be hosting a FAFSA completion workshop. And I said, we typically do. I'm not sure what that's going to look like this year. I don't know if you're probably not booking. Are you booking any in-person events like that, or is it still all virtual?
I'm going to one tonight and tomorrow night.
Okay.
So some schools are doing it differently. Some are requiring registration and limiting the amount of people that are coming because of their computer labs and having the social distancing, those kinds of things. So it just really depends on how you want that to look. Also, usually we have representatives from colleges that come to help as well, especially from schools that have large numbers. Some colleges are not sending representatives out, so we just have to be aware of that as well. But I think we've got Athens Tech is coming tonight. UNG is coming tonight. Maybe one other school. I know UGA is not sending folks out yet.
Okay, but really in the meantime, they can still schedule appointments with you if they have specific questions.
And if they need help going through the whole FAFSA, they can use that QR code and set up an appointment. And then, if they can do as much as they can, and if they have questions, and then we can Zoom and then go through what they need help with. Absolutely.
Yes, I know a lot of times the household situations get kind of tricky if you're living with a grandparent or whatever. So I do want to emphasize, please reach out to me or Ms. Vaughn, and we will definitely help you with that process, because it definitely can be tricky to figure out, and we don't want you to leave money on the table. Absolutely. Definitely. Okay, also 529 plan. Do you mind talking a little bit about that, how that affects financial aid eligibility as far as like Pell Grant?
So it will be looked at as an asset. Make sure that whoever is the custodian of it, and use those little help buttons to read it when you're filling it out, to know if you need to put that in, that amount on the student or on the parent, depending on who's the custodian and who's the beneficiary. And that those help buttons focus on the 529 plans, and you will find that where it's asking about assets.
Okay. I think that's all the questions. And I think you did mention, like, if a parent doesn't have a social security number, then we can help them navigate that process as well.
If they don't have socials, they cannot create an FSA ID, which means they can't use the data retrieval tool. But that just means that we would enter their tax information manually, no different than if a parent is filing separately, they would have to enter it manually. And then when you get to the signature page, you would have to print the signature page, sign and date it, and then just mail that in.
Okay, great. I'm looking, I don't see any more questions in the chat room, so y'all feel free to put one in there if you have a question.
And let me add with the taxes, if parents aren't legally required to file taxes, so maybe there's parents who are in retirement or in disability or anything like that, maybe unemployment right now or what have you, if they're not required to file tax returns, they can still complete the FAFSA. They would simply put not going to file. And as they're reading through the questions, it's going to ask, are you receiving disability, unemployment, workers' comp, those kinds of things. Again, make sure you're clicking on the blue help button, because some disability has to be reported and some disability does not have to be reported. So make sure you're reading those and clicking on those help buttons if it applies to you.
Yeah, that's definitely important information. I'm trying to think. I don't think I have any more questions. Like I said, I will let everyone know where you can access this after the fact, because I'm sure you're going to want to go back and look at some things that you remember but don't remember exactly everything about it. So thank you, Ms. Vaughn, as always. You're such a great resource and we appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
All right, guys, well, we're going to sign off for now. Thanks so much. Email me if you have questions.